All right, I got a little bit of a hot take for you this morning because in today's video, I'm going to be talking about Georgia Bulldog running backs. Not necessarily the backs currently on the roster right now, but all-time running backs. Who's the number one running back in Georgia history? Most would say Herschel Walker, but there are some out there who I know would say it's Todd Gurley. Where is Nick Chubb? Where's Sony Michel? We're going to talk about all that in today's video, but basically, we're going to break it down. And I think those are the top four. If you were to ask an average Georgia fan who are the best running backs in school history, the first would be Herschel Walker, then either Nick Chubb, Todd Gurley, Sony Michel. But in my opinion, if you take away the production, which I know, sounds crazy, but if you take away the numbers and the production, the championships and all that, if you're just looking at the best individual running back, I think you could make a case, for Todd Gurley. Now, I know Herschel Walker won the Heisman, should have won it his freshman year, could have won it his second year, right? He was the best player in college football for 3 years in a row. If you put Todd Gurley on Georgia's roster in the early 80s, he's crushing those dudes. Is he doing the exact same thing Herschel Walker did? Maybe. Todd Gurley was so big and so fast that, that's what made Herschel special. He was so fast and so big. He broke tackles, then ran by you, and he was able to put the offense on his back. That's why the numbers were so great. And because he was just a freak. He was incredibly athletic. But Todd didn't have those numbers because Todd had help. Todd had Aaron Murray, that quarterback slinging it around those first 2 years. He had Nick and Sony right behind him in his final year. But Todd Gurley was the best player in college football during the 2014 season, right? After that Vandy game where he threw like a 50-yard pass, almost better than any pass Hudson Mason threw all year. It was the next week, I believe, where the scandal and he got the autograph signings, he got paid, whatever. But he got suspended. They suspended the best player in college football. It was absolutely ridiculous. And you can laugh about it now, but at the time, it was ludicrous. And then he comes back against Auburn, has a pretty good game, and then tears his knee. But the young Georgia fans, I'm not sure they really remember, because it was Todd Gurley, his freshman year, 2012. I've always said that there are two running backs that didn't need to go to college. They could have gone straight from high school to the NFL and made a roster. Todd Gurley and Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson didn't need to go to Oklahoma. As a freshman at Oklahoma, he would have been on an NFL roster, and so would Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley was trucking dudes, running by them, running through them as a freshman in 2012, just crushing guys. He would have made an NFL roster when he was a freshman at Georgia. That's how good he was. We can talk about, I'm going to talk about more in this in just a second, because I do want to talk about Nick and Sony and Garrison Hurst and Noshawn. I mean, people forget how good Noshawn was. And I can't talk about Charlie Trippy, Frank Sinkwich, because it was so long ago. And all these running backs that I just talked about, they would have just crushed those guys as well in the 40s. You put Frank Sinkwich, Charlie Trippy in today's game, they're not doing that. They're not doing what Nick and Sony did. They're not doing what Todd or Noshawn did, right? They're just not. DeAndre Swift, Georgia's had so many great running backs, but I think you could make the case that Todd could have done what Herschel did in 1980, and Herschel probably could have done what Todd Gurley did in 2012, 13, and 14. Those two had a rare elite combination of size, speed, power, vision. They checked all the boxes. Now, did Herschel Walker have that shimmy, that little shake and bake that maybe DeAndre Swift had? Noshawn, Sony Michel. No, he wasn't that type of back, but he's still looked at as the best running back in Georgia history, one of the best running backs in college football history. I get all that. Nick Chubb and Sony Michel could have put up those numbers, in the 80s too. Would Nick have been as great without Sony? Would Sony have been as great without Nick? Those two were there for each other. They needed each other to be that 1-2 punch. Sony helped Nick out, Nick helped Sony out. Todd Gurley, had Keith Marshall, but Keith Marshall was not the player people thought he was. He was just he's a guy who could run really fast in a straight line. That was it. So it's not like Todd Gurley had this tremendous back right next to him who could be a 1-2 punch. It was Todd Gurley, massive drop off, Keith Marshall. But he did have Nick run wild, and Nick Chubb in 2014 had a massive monster year as a true freshman, trucking through Clemson Tigers, running through Auburn Tigers, running through basically everyone. I would probably lean to say Nick Chubb is number 3 on the all-time Georgia list. And again, you'd have to put Charlie Trippi and Frank Sinkwich up there, but they weren't better running backs than Nick Chubb or Sony Michel or Todd Gurley or Herschel Walker. They just weren't. Garrison Hurst was more than a speed back. He was electric, and we saw what he was able to do. But his ability to cut on a dime and go like 90 degrees up the field was crazy. DeAndre Swift, I think it's kind of fallen back in terms of the great running backs, because he did play with Nick and Sony, and he had great years in 18 and 19, but no one remembers him in the same light as they do others. Sean Marino was one of the Heisman candidates going into the 2008 season. People forget how good he was. I say people, I'm talking about younger Georgia fans that didn't watch them play. Now, I didn't watch Herschel Walker play, as crazy as that sounds, but there's enough clips and enough highlights to where you can go back and watch and see how good he was. But Todd Gurley, the first time he touched the football in Athens as a Georgia Bulldog, you knew immediately this guy's going to be special. This guy is a track star who runs like a deer. I mean, he's a full-grown Bulldog. He wasn't a pup his freshman year. He was a dog. He was like this guy. And you can get yours today. collegebronze.com. Should have mentioned this early in the video because this is a 5-star product. But yeah, you can get a discount, promo code DOGPOST in the description below. It's the most detailed, best-looking Bulldog statue on the market. Looking for Father's Day gift, still hunting down a graduation gift. It's right here. You're welcome. They are going to love this. Don't get them a shirt. Don't get them a tie. No one cares about any of that. Let your neighbors know that you pull for the Georgia Bulldogs. You're a 5-star fan. Get you a 5-star statue and get a discount. Everything's in the description below in this video. So you don't need to look. It's right here in this video, in the description. Get your discount. Don't forget that. But you know, how good would Herschel Walker be in today's game? He'd be really good. Is he rushing for 1,700 yards? No, because there's other running backs they'd give the ball to, and they would throw the ball. You didn't want Buck Bellew throwing the ball. You wanted him handing the ball off. But now, I mean, Georgia's going to have a quarterback for the foreseeable future, a really, really good one. But as far as production, yeah, he would be trucking a lot of these guys, but it's not the same. And people look and see what Herschel did in the 80s, and it's so fascinating. And it was incredible. He was way ahead of his time because he was bigger and faster and stronger than everyone, and he showed it. But was he a better running back than Todd Gurley? Was he a better running back than Nick Chubb? If you throw in vision, elusiveness, just all the other qualities, the shiftiness, the quick footwork, the ability to make a guy or two miss in the open field. Herschel could do that, but he didn't do it as well as Sony did or DeAndre Swift, if we're talking about that part of being a running back. They weren't as big and as fast as Todd and Herschel, but they had other elements that made them special. So again, if you throw the numbers and production out of it, which I know is kind of odd, but if we're talking about the single best running back, you could make a case for Todd. And I know Dean Legge probably, I believe he thinks that Todd is above Herschel, but you put Todd Gurley in the 80s, and it's not fair. It wasn't fair what Herschel was doing to those guys. Todd Gurley would have done the same thing. Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, they're probably doing the same thing. But again, they were great because they had a little help too. So they weren't carrying the ball 35, 40 times a game. That's not how you win championships now. But you have a guy like Herschel Walker, and you were able to win a championship even without a guy who could throw to win the game. I know he had the game-winning throw against Florida to Lindsey Scott and all that, but that they weren't winning because of Buck Blue. They were winning because of Herschel. And they were winning a lot of games because of Todd. Because in 2013, Aaron Murray had no receivers. He was throwing to Rhett McGowan. But Todd was hurt a good bit in 2013 with the high ankle sprain. But, you know, what do you think? And again, this is a May video. This is the end of May. Not a whole lot going on. I don't want to talk about recruiting in every video. So just a general conversation. Where do you rank the Georgia Bulldogs all time? Is Herschel the clear number one? Does Todd maybe give him a run for his money? Where's Nick and Sony? Where's DeAndre Swift? Where's Noshawn? Where's the rest? You let me know in the comment section below. Again, get your dog today. Promo code DOGPOST. Get your discount. It's all in the description below. Thanks for watching. See you on the website.